Hey everyone, welcome to the UFO live stream. Today is open lines where I hope to talk to some of you over Telegram. You can download Telegram on your computer or your phone, and in the description below you will find the UFO Hub Telegram group, where you should be able then, once you install it, see a chat going on right now where you just basically are able to hear me. It's voice only. So using that program, you'll also then be able to kind of give me a notice or raise your hand, because there's a little button where it looks like a person just raising their hand in class or whatnot, and that would tell me that there's somebody who wants to speak to me. I don't have a producer or somebody else that kind of screens the call, so when you make an announcement, I'll just keep you on hold until we're ready to start chatting. But if you do not want to speak to me or don't want to install the program, or maybe some other time, you can always in the chat wherever you happen to be right now, whether it's Twitch, Facebook, X, or YouTube, you can just put 3 asterisks in the chat going on right now, and then put your question there. That way I know it's something that you want my attention, or something that is meant for me instead of the regular chatter in the room. So today's format, I'm basically keeping it open for open lines, but I do have some videos I want to show you, and then there's some topics that I would like to actually talk to you guys about that based on my personal experiences, some things I've been going on, just thinking heavily about in the past several months in my own personal life. And so I thought, well, they're related to UFOs, they're related to my experiences. And the reason why I call them crazy is because it's something I experienced. And so now my life, of course, is altered by those experiences. So it's just kind of trying to give you maybe a little bit of a window of what in the world I think about looking at certain topics that are kind of a big deal for the planet. And there's some topics that are just more directly personal to me and important to me, trying to figure them out. And I'll talk about those. I hope you find it interesting. If not, I hope you tune in next week, because that's what I have on the agenda today. Of course, aside of if somebody dials in or calls in over Telegram to talk to me and share their supernatural story. But so what I would like to start out with is I just have I think 3 videos that I would like to show you, and they're pretty interesting, and just please take them as entertainment, and for entertainment purposes only. I don't have a surefire way to say, yes, this video is 100% real, or no, this video is, looks CGI'd, unless it's something obviously CGI'd. I have no other way to confirm it, but I would like to show it to you because I found it interesting, and I thought you might as well. So let me switch over to my browser, and then we'll start with the first video. This one was taken on September 11, 2020 in Venezuela. So you'll see some people speaking Spanish in the background. So I'll just play this video for you. It's supposed to be a video of a cigar-shaped object. So you'll see for yourself. It's pretty interesting, and I'll let you be the judge whether or not you think this is real or not.
José, rápido, graba esa vaina, mira qué arrecho.
Ya va.
Rápido, arriba de la casa.
Voy, ya va.
Mira, tómalo en un platillo.
Ya va.
Coño, ahí, déjalo ahí que está parado. Nada, huevo, nada, mira esa mierda. Coño, pero mira, justo en el momento en que nos vinimos, mira.
No se mueve, mira.
No, que eso dura así parado, no te digo que nosotros fuimos, así fue como el que nosotros vimos. Qué arrecho. Eso no van a creer ese cuento, te lo juro que cuando lo digamos, lo grabaste, si no lo grabaste, grabar.
Se está yendo, mira, se está yendo.
Se fue,
se está yendo.
Era de aquí para
se está
allá.
yendo.
Coño, pero gracias a Dios. ¿Sí lo grabaste? Vamos
sí.
a revisar a ver si grabaste o no grabaste. No, grabaste un poco.
Qué arrecho.
¿Sí grabó?
Sí.
Vamos a ver. José,
So,
rápido, graba esa.
Let me pause that. I can't, obviously, as you all know, I don't speak Spanish. I don't know what they're talking about, but they seem to be very excited about what they're observing. So maybe one of these days I'll learn Spanish, and then I would know. So the next one, so this one I I wish people wouldn't do this all the time, but it's just my personal preference. They have, dramatic music, and it was something interesting that it could be CGI'd, but it also couldn't. It basically has a good chance being real because of just the nature of UFOs, about the silence, about the stories that thousands have shared about very large craft with basically just silent, hovering very low above the ground. And so I'll play this video for you. This gal has her own little intro, so you'll hear that. And let me get started on that.
The Paranormal Chick here. Take a look at this crazy video. The witness records what seems to be a massive UFO slowly flying over a Coca-Cola truck. Could this truly be a UFO, or is this something else? Take a look and tell me what you think.
Jump the gun. It has basically just playing the video again, but more in slow motion, and it's intriguing. I mean, it has just all the typical UFO characteristics, and I don't know. I just wish there was more of a definite way. I guess if you recorded yourself and you were there, that's the only way you can tell, yep, this was real. Okay, and so let's go to a third video, and this one is also, it's very clear. It's very, because you don't usually get to have shots like this. So again, it has a good chance of being CGI'd, but I'll play it for you nonetheless. Apparently, it was taken over China in an airplane, and this is what they saw.
As the plane soared above an unfamiliar region in China, a passenger gazed out of the window, capturing a captivating video. A sense of awe and curiosity filled the air as the passenger's camera focused on a peculiar sight, a disc-shaped object, about the size of a small car, effortlessly gliding in parallel to the airplane, near one of its wings. The crispness of the video allowed the viewer to perceive the details of the disc distinctly. As seconds passed, an intriguing occurrence took place. The mysterious object seemed to activate a device of some sort, creating a mesmerizing effect. Space and time itself appeared to fold around the disc, as if the laws of physics were being bent to its will. The passenger's video captured the surreal moment in all its glory, a testament to an encounter that defied conventional understanding. As the object sped away from the aircraft, its velocity accelerated to a staggering 24,000 miles per hour, leaving an indelible impression on the mind of the witness.
All right, that's what I have for you regarding the videos. And so what I'm trying to decide first which direction to go. Quick update. So I do have, while I'm here, it's funny. Anyway, for those of you who can't see this while watching only, I'm on the current live stream right now. And so what I did is I put the whole library together and basically have a program going on 24/7 of not the live that I started about a year ago, not the live shows, but the pre-recorded interviews that I did throughout all the years leading up to before this live format, basically. And I have them all streaming and sending out to the web, to the UFO Up channel. And so if you are wanting to watch something, or you're not sure what to watch, or don't like picking, this is something that basically runs 24/7 that you can check out. I think this video is of me, I forgot the title of it. What was it? It was something, it was around 9/11 several years back. So it was about, oh shoot, I can't even remember anymore. It was, forgot what the title was. It was another talk, second talk that I've ever given. And this was at one of the local bowling alley places where one of the meetings was going on, UFO meetings in St. Louis, and they would, I think, meet every Monday, and so this was just basically me covering different subjects, different topics, and talking to the group there. But this is just what happens to be playing right now, and so let's get started, I guess, with one of these first topics that are often, I guess, there's a point of view from the humans and how we argue about this, and then there's also this spiritual point of view and channeled messages about population or overpopulation, or in this case, the overpopulation myth. So several years back, when I was still kind of learning from Bashar and what he was talking about, I was trying to understand him and kind of go down my own path to learn and experience more and find out whether or not he's, full of it, if all of this is just BS or not, what he talks about. There was, during one of the meetings that he channeled, a person, I believe it was a gal, that walked up to him and was talking about population and how we had this population boom. And he was explaining that in 2012, basically was this demarcation point, basically from where before that point, everything was majority negative. And then after that point, it would start rolling more and more and more into the positivity, to where it would basically, what we are experiencing today, it will unravel everything, basically show who the politicians are, what they're about, all the things that government has been hiding, all these hidden things, like Epstein Island, all this stuff that was before hidden is now basically revealed. And so what he was talking about is that a lot of souls wanted to be basically born during that time to have that experience. And so from a spiritual perspective, it created a population boom. When you look at it on the world, you're like, okay, well, things were improving, water, living standards. So more and more people were having babies. And so, of course, it went from whatever it happens to be, 5 billion in the 90s to what is it now, 7 billion. And so, of course, then there was this talk about that this planet is overpopulated. And so there's always been this contention: is it overpopulated? Is it not? Are there lies and whatever? And so what's interesting is that on this particular talk, this lady was under the impression that the planet is overpopulated, and how can this kind of be fixed? And so Bashar was talking about that eventually it will level itself out, and it will have a natural way of just basically declining, to where then it will go down to a different level, a different, I should say, manageable level, but not in the sense of that the planet cannot sustain X amount of people. It's just that the way we deal with resources and the way we're handling with the resources is not sustainable. It's not that the planet can't sustain us, because he was saying that if we did everything right and were more aware of our surroundings and the planet, it could easily sustain 18 billion people and not be a problem for it. But because the way we are handling things, the resources are one of the issues. And then the other part was, it's actually more of a choice on our end, is to live in these cities where we just live in these blocks and apartment complexes, and just have somebody above us, below us, to the left of us, to the right of us, and just basically like rats in these little homes. And so if you're of that mindset who wants to live in that city, you would be like, oh my God, there's too many people. I can't have a comfortable life to go to the grocery store that's only 10, 15 minutes away. I can't go to the theater and all that because there's so many people there. If you just literally moved 20 miles outside of those city limits, like as I had my own experiences in Robertsville, Missouri, there was hardly anybody around. There was land to be bought. There was land for sale if you wanted it. The only difference was I was driving 50 miles to work and so roughly about an hour from where I lived to work and back. And so it was, to me, it was not a brainer there. It was just, I wanted to go back to my own peace and heaven, so I didn't mind driving that distance. But if you're somebody who wants to live in those cities and just doesn't want to give up that convenience, it's cramped, it's overpopulated, and in that sense, you were right. But generally, if you looked at the planet overall, especially if you flew over the United States, there's several videos you can watch where you have a densely populated area as the plane takes off, and then a whole bunch of nothingness, and meaning no major population centers, mainly farms or deserts or other things before you get to another point. And so when you really looked at the whole map, there were just these few points where all of United States population lived, and everything else was just open. And so anyway, so he was talking about how this would naturally level out, and how then eventually, because she thought, she was having the thought of, well, is the Illuminati trying, going to kill people, as they often have these conspiracies online, to down to 500 million, to whatever is supposed to be the more manageable number. And he was talking about that it would actually happen naturally as things progress, that people will have less and less children, and some will choose not to have them, and so it will level out and decline again. Well, recently, I saw a documentary, and I have the screen up for you to see. It's called Birth Gap, Childless World Part 1. And actually, the second part you can see on their website, but it was actually very interesting how they were projecting the numbers, and it put a lot of different things in perspective for me, because beyond that first initial research and looking into what Bashar is saying, and then just doing the research at that time, which was 13, 14 years ago now, I haven't really done much afterwards, because soon after I started a family, and that kind of just diverted me from everything else, because it just intensifies with a lot more other things that you just have to stay busy, diapers and kids and screaming, and I took my candy and all that stuff going on in family. So of course, naturally, I kind of stopped with whatever I was doing. But they're getting older, so I have more time just to myself, just even 10, 15 minutes at a time, to just have another thought that doesn't deal with, who did who wrong and whatever, to be constantly the referee. So this documentary came around where they saw that a lot of these populations are actually going to be in a lot of trouble, because there seems to be and forgive me if I'm now maybe forgetting the exact specifics, but in order for any country to have a sustainable population that will have enough future generations to take care of the previous ones, to basically maintain the systems, be workers, doctors, and so on, they would basically have to, the percentages to have, I think, 2.1 average of a child per family. And they basically noticed there seems to be a big trend that hasn't been changing for quite a while, that's been below that, 1.5 and lower. And different countries have actually already been hit with this. And I've heard this a long time ago and always been kind of talked about, but I never really paid close attention to it, which specifically is Japan. So Japan, they've been creating all these robots. They've been basically just designing this whole new future. And I always, at that time, I feel silly that I didn't stop to really pay attention. Why are they doing what they're doing? But at that time, it was like, don't they know these robots are just going to take away more of their jobs that somebody or human being can do? And it was just, it didn't make any sense. Now that I've had more time to just kind of stop and look and read and watch, and trying to understand things better, it made a lot more sense now. For quite a while, the Japanese population they have more older people than they have younger. I can't remember exactly what the percentage is, but it's gotten to a point to where schools are shutting down. It's gotten to a point to where prisons are shutting down because simply the population is dwindling. People are more concentrated on their job and work, and either choose to have few children later on in life or not at all. Not at all. And so, this documentary I would recommend for you to watch because it gives another point of view, which is the opposite of population, overpopulation, and how that's bad for the planet and all these other things. Because there's several things that I never really thought about, but that's very important to think about, is that, and this is not necessarily an attack on anybody that chooses to do this, but so, for example, somebody that chooses to, let's say, have an abortion or not have a child, in general, it's always thought from the individual point of view that, can I sustain this family? Can I have this child? And can this child have a nice life to continue living and not suffer for the rest of their life? And so that's always just kind of this very narrow lens looking at that particular scenario. But if you look at it from the whole population in general, if you look at all the achievements that were ever achieved by any individual, whatever their drive, whatever the genetic makeup they had that made them succeed, to made them the number one at whatever they happen to do, it is always very rare. It's like, one in so many thousands, if not one in millions. And so when you stop to think about how many generations it takes to have this one genius to be born, to basically then continue the society in some way through some kind of innovation that makes our lives easier. And so when you constantly are in this process of just, for lack of a better word, and forgive me, for saying it in this way, but if you keep killing off the next generation, there's so X amount of geniuses that could have been born that are not going to be. And so you kind of stagnate the pool of potential to where how many Elon Musks were killed off, how many Albert Einsteins, Isaac Newtons, you name it, all these people that basically changed our life in one way or another. And so, because we always just like to think about it from a personal, individual point of view, but never really like what kind of effect will it have if we're, let's say, all of the sudden in quick 20 years, 30 years, dwindle down to 500 million. That's a lot of brain power that's now missing. And, not only then, okay, will we be able to sustain what we have, but will we ever be able to innovate in the same speed that we have for our future with that less of a brain power, with that amount of basically of the population on the planet? Will trade happen the same way that it does now? Will it go back to taking a month for you to get your package once you order it on whatever version of Amazon there happens to be? Will there be enough people to pack whatever it is that you just ordered? If you go to a doctor, will you have a doctor in that town, or do you have to go next town over? And so all those questions come up, and those are the things that basically been on my mind, just from trying to understand from the spiritual point of view and from our physical point of view, like which direction are we going as humanity. And so if you want to start down this rabbit hole regarding this particular subject, check it out. I would really recommend watching this documentary. And again, I know, especially for us in America, and depends on where else in the world, you always have these two sides that are constantly battling about who's right and who's wrong. And for me personally, I'm really don't care, for either side. All I want is an accurate account of facts and information so that I can truly make a decision on my own. And when I really think back on just different people, talking about these different subjects, is when it comes to communication, you have to be almost at a point of view that you don't want to win or one up over the other person. It's to come to an understanding and realize, like, we're in the same boat, whatever that boat is. And whether one person dramatizes something. Oh my God, we're going to die today, and the other person like, I'll be fine, just relax. We should be able to find an easy medium to where if we're talking about overpopulation or underpopulation, if we're talking about climate change versus everything is happening, everything is just fine. When each side is on each of their respective ends, they tug at each other, and so you will never come together to find a common ground. Because I personally, I love clean rivers, waters, forests, plenty of wildlife, and just basically to live in this paradise that the planet is. And so if somebody has a solution to something, I'm very much open to like, okay, what seems to be the problem? Let's see if it can be fixed, instead of me coming from a point of view of, well, my view is right, you're wrong, and this has to be changed for this reason. Because one thing that's very off-putting, and immediately I think that's where all these problems get created, is by when you have somebody that says, okay, climate change is very important. Now you have to lose your God-given rights as a human being to, let's say, eat certain foods, do certain things, and someone else will then have control over that. That's, I think, where for me the problem kicks in, because that's not a solution. To put somebody in this open prison to where some have online already suggested, let's start eating bugs only, and not meat, and let's only do this. At the end of the day, there's always, then you can see that there is going to be an elite, that none of these rules apply, and only applies to you and everyone else. And so that's where the problem begins for me, to where, well, hold on, now we're not coming together to communicate to try to figure out what the best solution is. Now you're just basically selling me a control mechanism over my life. And so that's where the problem comes to me, because I'm not disagreeing, personally, there's so many people that are strong about electric cars, gas cars. I love both. I really do. And right now, gas vehicles are very convenient because you can drive. There's a gas station in every corner. You refill in 5 minutes, you can keep going. But I also love electric vehicles, and for the power that they have, and then of course there's the downfall of the range and all this other stuff. And then when you really look into the research, there's this control mechanism trying to control carbon, of how much carbon is being released in the atmosphere. But nobody wants to talk about basically the stepchild that electric cars are, which is there's so much more carbon being released by producing the battery, by needing more coal for electric power, and basically solar and wind and all these other things that are way more inefficient than what we have now, like nuclear and other things. It was really funny. There was I think there's a documentary called Planet of the Humans, and I think it was Michael Moore. He's a documentarian. He does different documentaries, and he's I guess on maybe outside of the United States people might not understand, but in America there's this left, right, liberal and conservative, factions, and so he's very much on the left, pro all new energy, green energy, and all this other stuff. Well, he did this documentary in a way being very pissed off, because he found out in order to have this very green way, you have to use a lot of fuel, and a lot of these fuel companies are involved with that. And so it really taints the whole Green New Deal in that approach. And so anyway, that's a documentary I would recommend you watching, because it's coming from a person that is very much pro just getting off of fossil fuels, and finding out that at this point, at this time in our lives, as humans, we can't survive without the fossil fuels, and basically doing the things the way we've always done, at least at this moment. So okay, so what I wanted to go into next, and again, if you have any questions, please put them down in chat, and I'm asking you just put 3 asterisks before your questions, so I know it's for me, because I know all of you have been chatting, so I don't see I don't see anything coming through that would necessarily be directly for me. Okay. All right. No, nothing right now. So the next thing that I wanted to go into is actually answering a question from a person that has submitted via Telegram. And so I kind of jumped on Telegram earlier yesterday saying something along the lines like open lines tomorrow, who's open for chat, or I can't even remember what I wrote, but something along those lines, just to let everyone know, hey, there'll be open lines tomorrow, join me on Telegram. And so this person went by DW, and their question was, I'm trying to read. I just realized I should have made the text bigger because I'm looking at this from like close to 12 feet away. It's just basically saying hello, and he has a question, and it is, I lost my spot. Okay, here you go. It says, I'm kind of new to a few of these topics, but I've been interested in UFO, spirituality, paranormal, etc. for a long time. What's your opinion on crossover of these topics? So aliens, interdimensional beings, spiritual guides, ghosts, even Bigfoot, cryptozoology. Could they be different interpretations or manifestations of the same or similar things? They've just interpreted by different people in different ways. Or are they all different and independent events? You could also possibly include popular religion in the list. So the last sentence, basically, I will get into the top part, what he was asking about, but the last sentence reminded me when I was reading this about this other channel. It's called Let's Talk Religion, and it's called what is Gnosticism. And so this person talks about basically this Nag Hammadi library being discovered in 1945, and he goes into the different religions and how they kind of started out. And it was very interesting for anyone that's still just wanting to understand kind of human religions, never mind the other spiritual things that New Age nowadays has. But what's very interesting, this Gnosticism, is it basically the way they were talking and the way things were described in these ancient books, you would have thought that this was some New Age book that was just released yesterday, because a lot of the ways that things started out, they had a lot of what they called these different heresies. And it was kind of throwing me off because a heretic, I always understood to be, I guess, just for lack of a better word, somebody against your religion, and basically somebody bad who you shouldn't listen to, right? Just to give you like a childish example of just generally what I thought a heretic meant. But later on, as this person describes, it was very interesting that heresies are actually just different variations on this thought of God, and it just blew my mind. I was like, oh, wow. And then so the more I was watching and trying to understand what this library contained, is that they were basically, it kind of describes the early struggle of information that basically was lost then, but now rediscovered and already has been out through Buddhism and some of these other Asian, basically, Asian timeline of religion, so to say. With you have Hinduism, Buddhism, and then you had Catholics and Protestants and the Orthodox Church, and then why they split, and then calling each other heretics and all these other things, because each split was considered to be an heresy of this original strand of Christianity. And so it was very interesting to just, you have to watch it. I'm sorry I can't get into that much detail, but it was very interesting from the point of it could literally be a new age book that you just checked out today, when you listen to how they were describing things, and then these different conversations being had amongst groups of people, and where the disagreements started and so on. So I wanted to bring that up. I don't know if I did bring this up before in previous shows, but I figured better late than never. And so let let me switch over to bigger screen because I don't need it right now, but I'll come back to it. So to answer this person's question about these crossovers, right? As everybody says, opinions and crossovers on these topics. So let me get a drink. If you ever personally read any of these different books, right? It doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Dolores Cannon, whether it's David Icke, Stephen Greer, you name it, whoever. I would almost said whoever. Maybe not so much the History Channel people, but they're slowly getting there. You'll start to understand that consciousness is a big point, a big basically spot that connects everything, a dot that just you can throw everything in. And unless you've had your own personal experience, you can go around trying to find different books that will give you explanations, but only through an actual experience, whether you achieved it through meditation, through some other means, like ayahuasca trip in South America, or whatever that is. You quickly realize that everything is consciousness. This thing that you are that controls your individual body is basically also everything else outside of you, everything you're interacting with. And through these different frequencies and different vibrations, it can create itself into whatever it is that you need to interact with. So it can be this mic, it can be the air, it could be the very sound that's being transmitted through the air that then is picked up by the mic, and and anyone else that's within your vicinity that can hear you or watch you on the television or the computer or cell phone, whatever. And so this consciousness is basically all there is. And so we've basically played a very interesting game for a very long time, to where we've played it so well that we've managed to disconnect ourselves from pretty much anything but our own thoughts in our head, to where everything outside of us is basically an enemy or something unknown that you have to figure out, is this something safe to interact with or not? And not realizing you only are interacting with yourself, because in all of existence, whether you've experienced it yourself or read any of these books, you realize there's only one energy here. There's only one energy that is expressing itself in this infinitesimal way, to where when you are interacting with it again, it can have an appearance of another human being, an appearance of an alien, an appearance of Bigfoot, an appearance of a table and the cell phone you're using, and just all these things in your life. And so generally it sounds really good if you read it. You're like, oh, this is awesome. There's this peace to knowing, like, oh, there's no good, there's no bad, there's just consciousness interacting with itself. But when you experience it on your own, whatever medium or whatever way you use, it is the most beautiful and the most scariest thing you will ever experience, because it is something entirely different from this existence that you've had. And so not only are you thrown into this other way of looking at things and these other places that you have to go to have that experience, it changes everything about you. So to answer the question, yes, everything is already interconnected. And I mentioned that several times on the show from my own personal experience, and from, I'm pretty sure, a lot of these books out there that you can find and read about. The only difference is that, as I've always said, in whatever way, however little of a step you take, you have to kind of try to go out on your own and gain that experience. You cannot live it through a book. You can't live it through a story. You can't live it through a video. You have to spend enough time to put yourself in positions to where whatever you're experiencing goes beyond just pondering about it, but now becomes part of your life, to where it's going to be an experience that's ingrained in you, that will now change you forever, where you can then move forward with this new understanding and act in different ways. And to go back just just real quick about population that we're talking about. There's also always been this contention between communism, capitalism, which one is better. There's been wars fought over it. And so when I was originally born, I was born in Yugoslavia, in this part that's Bosnia. And so in a way you can think of it as that the country I was born in doesn't exist anymore, but that patch called Bosnia was always there in some form or another. And so understanding how people were living then under this communistic, basically this communistic mindset, and seeing how people live here in the United States, it's really interesting that people are still toying with the idea of communism. And I will come around and connect this to my earlier point regarding consciousness, and you'll understand what I'm trying to get at. In order to achieve harmony, you have to first know yourself, know your fears, know your angst, know your phobias, know your, all the stuff that basically makes life uncomfortable for you. In order then to be around somebody else, that is kind of in that similar process, who's also worked over and worked out all these problems, to where now you can exist in harmony in ways to where now you can move forward once you're fortified your being, who you are, what you are, why you're here, and then you can move together, move forward. Communism, in a lot of ways, wants to just achieve that by just smashing people together, irregardless of what's going on the individual level. So you can have somebody who's, literally a psychopath, and somebody maybe a priest, or just very peaceful person who just has totally different point of view, and they put them all together saying, for the betterment of the whole, do this job. And for the betterment for everybody, you will all get the same reward of everything you're doing. And so what's interesting is that there's so many artists that are into communism. There's so many actors and artists in that way, to where you have plays, never mind paintings, that basically want to express how awesome communism would be because we all would be one, but they don't realize that that very act of being a painter, by being an actor, that expression that you had initially, that freedom to think whatever you want to think, communism will basically shut that down, in the sense of, well, in order for this to work out, everybody, or all these walks of life with all these random people, let's say make it a country, in order for all that to work out, they all have to then together work towards a goal. And so that means irrelevant to somebody's fears, irrelevant to somebody's needs and wants, just all of that is pushed aside and just pushed forward to say, nope, for the betterment for all, why can't you see this will work out? And in every sense that I was able to research on my own and experiencing it through my own life, it always fails, because the individual has not worked on themselves in order to make the whole possible. When we were growing up, I guess you can consider us truly being poor. Wherever we ended up as refugees, fleeing the country, you didn't have a country, you were trying to find a home. And so it was one of these things to where you don't care about the environment. You don't care about, world peace and all these other things. All you literally care about in that instant when your life is threatened is that your own safety, and will you be able to have food? And what's interesting, over all the decades, striving, my whole family here, myself specifically, striving to just have a better life each time, the more and more things are improving and the more and more things are met, that's when other things come into mind, to where you start caring more about the environment. You start caring about your fellow man. You start caring about a whole bunch of other stuff, to where before all you knew is that I need to survive, I need shelter. And so in a lot of ways, communism has that great idea, but they keep forgetting this very unique point of view, which is you, individual human being, the part of the whole, the little glass, the little shard of glass of the whole consciousness that you are, has to go through basically your own trials and errors to figure yourself out and to be basically the strongest link in the chain. Only then can the chain work together and work as one and be strong. But by that time, you wouldn't need labels like communism or capitalism, because then you would already live a specific life to where you just have an understanding now which way to go, because now everybody has left all that behind. Not just literally just cut it off and not looking at it. They worked through what they need to work through, and they basically are achieving this naturally without needing a leader to tell you so, without needing a government to constrict you, without needing somebody to watch you. Especially, it's funny that when we fled, there was all these different countries that wouldn't accept us. They would just say, stay on the train, keep going. So we're going through the Czechoslovakia at that time, and Poland. We went through Germany. We heard along the way, the Swedes were accepting refugees. So we went there. They kept us at the port there for about 4 days. And then we were sent back to the last departure point, which was Germany. And that's how I ended up basically staying there for 6 years or so. It was just basically begging, not me specifically, but as we were fleeing, this whole group of people, there were, men, women, and children, and each family was like, 4 people per family generally. And there was about maybe 20, 30 families all together wherever we went, because there was safety in numbers. It's like being in a new country, you had no idea, what to expect, but being together, there was somewhat of an illusion of safety. Well, anyway, the Germans were very kind to then, accept us, and that's where we stayed there for a little while, right? But again, it was like that whole environment, like you just didn't care for anything else but survival, and so when it comes to basically crossovers and all these aliens and this and that, all these subjects, I mean, quite literally everything is consciousness, and it's just re-experiencing itself in all these infinite ways that it is. And, basically, whether you're sitting there watching a documentary about the Nag Hammadi library, whether you're watching a documentary about overpopulation, watching something about somebody telling about aliens or ghosts or Bigfoot, it's literally this awesome expression of this consciousness that's God, and all you are doing is just basically interacting with it in this one unique point of view that is you, and it's so to answer the last sentence where it says, or are they all different and independent events? The answer is yes, because if you look at your own body, you have billions of different cells that basically do all their different parts and have different experiences, but they all together make up who you are. And so, you are basically just whatever these cells are making out to be, and you also are the individual cells that makes you up, even though that individual cells might have a blueprint of DNA just for a little part and might not understand the whole, but it is part of the whole nonetheless. Okay, let me see. I'm looking over just to see if there were any questions that were submitted. And I kept seeing in my peripheral vision that the chat was going up, and I wasn't paying attention to it. I didn't want to get too distracted. So the next point I want to make, this is just talking about one of those other things or thoughts that I basically have from just my own personal life and whatever I have that's going on there. I have mentioned a few times, if I can get to the window, I've mentioned a few times, I have this other channel, and I'm a ham radio operator also. And so I'm just showing you just my little station that's just on the other side of this room, basically across the wall. And so communication is, I guess, something that's always been part of my life. including what I do now, communicating and talking, or whether it's over the radio. And I'm just showing it to you basically because just to show you how much of an interest that is. And so, of course, having experienced communication that is, I guess, considered telepathic, and all these different weird messages or all these other things that were conveyed to me in this entirely different way. It wasn't through radio, it wasn't through TV, it wasn't through any of these other modes, but in a very different way. And so now that I've had more time to just kind of think and ponder about these different things, I'm revisiting my own experiences and just taking a different look about what communication is going to look like. Because even Bashar, years ago, when I was listening to him, he was mentioning that none of the alien races use frequencies, radio frequencies. And so we can have SETI and have SETI send out signals all day long for an entirety of the whole human race, and we would never get a response back, because a communication for most of these, actually all of these different alien races that have the ability to make contact with us, communication happens in an entirely different way. And so I was just mainly sad about it, about this from, very selfish point of view, because I was like, I want to continue talking to people on the radio and get in touch. And I don't have a good HF rig, and basically HF is just high frequencies, and those are the frequencies that basically make long distance communication more possible through skip, where you can talk to Japan or Germany or anywhere else in the world, depending on the conditions. Or band conditions, as they call them, because each frequency is considered a band, and so sometimes the conditions are clear and sometimes they're not. And so even a while back, I had another ham to send me a message, say, hey, get on 10 meters, Bosnia is coming in real strong, and I had just taken down my radio and all that antenna because I was just retuning things. I was like, I can't do it right now. But anyway, it's important to me. And so in this very selfish way, I was kind of thinking like, well, that sucks, because it's going to become, irrelevant in a way. And so then I started thinking about what specifically mail and email did to mail, the physical mail, snail mail, as they call it here, and the actual acts of having a paper and writing something down and having a typewriter to where you type it up, and that joy of putting your thoughts down on paper to a loved one or somebody else who you would like to communicate with, even though you can replicate it, it's not anymore the main mode of communication. Main mode is send an instant email. Within seconds, it's received if you have the correct address. You can immediately call somebody, and compared to electronic frequencies and physical paper, that's quite a difference in communication modes. And so, of course, if they're not using frequencies through radio, if they're not communicating a lot of times by just using the vocal cords to produce sound, that's kind of going to be a huge change if and when that comes. And that's why also part of this title for this 104th, I think, right now, live stream that I have, I called it Let's Talk Crazy, because those are the things that are on my mind that maybe some people either haven't considered or never heard about. And so I thought, well, if I'm already having these thoughts, and I thought, what will it hurt if I just shared with you like what's been kind of bothering me, even though you think, whoa, look at all the stuff going on in the world. As I've always said to you, you are going to be experiencing the frequencies that you're part of. And so even though there's a lot of stuff going on in the planet, in my space, in my world, is peace, is Eden, and living where I live with my family is basically, it's something that is not something that I need to be necessarily part of right now. I was part of it for a long time in my life, and I finally found that peace, here in the United States, where I can just now move on and look at other things while other people are basically again re-exploring the same things that I did quite 30 years ago, and so I'm wondering, especially because for example, the way Bashar and the way it generally has been described by different channels, how travel through space works, they've described it that they basically create a bubble around the space that they are in, and it isolates them and neutralizes them away from this timeline that they're in. And whatever frequency they then change it using their mind, whatever frequency they change to, they instantly appear in that environment. And so they don't have to traverse through any long distance of space and go through space like we always imagine with rockets and going from here to Mars and further on. They just basically have an understanding about who they are, part of this consciousness, and what role they play in to where they developed as a society in that way, but also develop technology. And so just made me wonder then, okay, well, radio in a way, the way I use it, and cell phones that we use are almost going to become so irrelevant, like, let's say, Morse code is irrelevant to most of us. Because at one point on this planet, Morse code was the quickest way, innovative way to try to communicate information, emergencies, relevant things, almost instantly and quickly, compared to mail having to travel via train, via boat to get to wherever it needs to get to. And even though it's still used to some very limited extent, mainly among ham radio operators, the way we are communicating now will change too. Because if we're talking about frequencies, a lot of times, let's say this travel through space, they've developed these, I call it develop, but a lot of times Bashar has described it as growing their ships, basically growing them into the shapes that they are. And they are already then with some kind of process that I apologize, I don't remember right now, because again, I'm trying to recall information from like 20 years ago. They basically infuse with this ship with a form of artificial intelligence, but it's actually closely matched to the pilot. It's almost like you can say a version of consciousness from the pilot itself. And so what they then do is, I guess for lack of a better word, program all these different frequencies into the ship to where the pilot doesn't have to do as much work, but the ship will already be pre-programmed to be like, here's this frequency for this specific location, and bam, they immediately appear where they appear because they wanted to travel there. And so if that's the case with that, then at least for us in the versions of humans that we are now, if telepathy is still a challenging thing and whatever is going to be happening in the next 20 years, maybe they would just basically develop other devices to where then they will tap into a part of us to where we can just immediately communicate with somebody without needing to use voice or needing to write a message or etch something in stone so that someone else can read it on the other end. And so anyway, that's part of the talking crazy part that I wanted to discuss with all of you. And so that's what's been kind of on my mind. And I know some of you who have been into this for a long time, you might have an understanding what I'm talking about. If you're new to this is probably absolutely nuts to you. But like with everything, just take this as entertainment. If you want to follow up on it, you can. And I could suggest to you some things that you can kind of start going this direction to where you're going to be in the same mindset where I am right now, because so many times then what's really going on with the world out there becomes almost irrelevant, because I have another path. I have other things to think about and move forward with than what the world is, doing right now. Because I'm pretty sure during the time that the war in Bosnia was happening, there were other people at other parts in the world where they were just in peace, raising their family, living, just fine, and going about their day-to-day life, and not experiencing anything I've experienced. And so in a lot of ways, the circle is completed to where I'm at that state for me personally in my own life. And so that's why with everything that can be going on right now, I'm not too concerned with it, because unless it directly involves me in some way or another, I just have to move on with other thoughts, other things that I want to do in life. Okay, so let's see if we have any questions here. Well, I'm glad y'all been chatting. I don't know exactly about what, but okay, there's one coming through. So let's see. Silky B wrote, I recently heard a new Bashar clip from Sedona where he said he was in his triangular ship. What do you think? Well, so Bashar has talked about that he's basically in a stationary orbit in his ship over Sedona, and he's been there for quite a long time. That's not to say that he doesn't go to different places, but my understanding is that he is at that focal point that also in some way acts like a barometer to how close we are to contact. So at one point he was at a certain altitude, and since then he has come down closer and closer to basically to closer and closer to a planet, which is supposed to be this gauge to how close we are to contact. And what's actually very interesting, just again, I love these different synchronicities. So there was a lady at that time when I was watching her, and she was talking to him about hybrid children and all these other things. And he just asked her for one moment, and then he announced, based on the energy and the conversations they were having, it changed enough, not just between them two, but on the whole planet, to where he came down closer. He says, now I am at this level and this altitude, which means getting closer and closer to contact. And talking about synchronicities, that lady was Barbara Lamb, who I then happened to meet at the conference and interviewed and talked to several times. Excuse me one second. Sorry about that. I had to cough. But Barbara Lamb, she did a lot of the work that Dolores Cannon did in similar ways, but hers specifically concentrated on hybrid children. And she has written a book talking to different people that say they are offsprings or hybrids from these different programs. And I haven't read the book. I would suggest you read the book yourself. I asked her if I could interview some of them, but she said, I'll reach out, but it's up to them to reach back to me. And they're not, I don't know, they're very, just very, they were okay with talking to her because of the agreements that was made prior to this life that they remembered, and it's okay to talk to her and have this happen. But I don't know why it didn't work out to where I could possibly interview them, because they are also people that have this memory, this understanding that apparently they are hybrids, but they work regular jobs, live other lives, and have a different purpose. And so maybe being interviewed, it would, throw all that off. But anyway, those, you asked me what are my thoughts. That's something that because of, like I said, I believe Bashar because of the things that then I set out to prove to myself whether or not he was wrong or right. And so I'm talking about these true lessons that you can apply to your own life. And people like, oh, but well, Bashar said this was going to come true and this didn't. Well, that's in a way what we consider a prediction, and there were a lot of them that I remember that he was talking about that have come true, and some nothing happened or nothing yet. But you also have to understand he's always, from the very beginning that I've ever was listening to his material, he described it that it's just a reading of the energy at this moment. The second you know about it already opens up infinitesimal possibilities of change for that to change, because you can choose not to go down that route, or you can choose to exactly go down that route, or everything in between. And so if something is then didn't happen, enough changed to where it's not important, not relevant in our timeline anymore. Okay. Roll the Losing Dice says, do you think the whole Grush thing is a psyop or controlled release? I don't know. All I know is, if I'm just, talking about this new age energy stuff again, enough of energy, I think, is changing to where government, these parts of the consciousness that we call government, is realizing they're going to be out of control, meaning they're not going to be controlling the narrative, are not going to be positioned in the right spot to be controlling the narrative about what's out there. I think they want to still be major players, so they, offer this olive branch to, let's talk about it. Okay, NASA, go ahead, start looking at videos, use science to apply, whatever you can to prove or disprove these videos were recorded. Scientists, all these different people that basically are finally looking at these videos and going like, wow, according to our physical understanding, this is not possible, right? And so government is trying to be relevant. And I had, actually, funny you ask, just today, I got a text from Chief Sean Cahill. He was one of the guys that was, he was present on the ship while they were basically observing the Tic Tac. And I asked him if he could put me in touch with David Grush to invite him to come to the Ozark Mountain UFO conference that's coming up in April in 2024. And unfortunately, he had to decline, but he's also said that he would decline any other conference until like this has played out with whatever is going on right now. Because a lot of times, like I said, because I live in my own little world right now, I totally forgot there's, because of the whole top secret stuff and what's released, what hasn't been released. There's government and lawyers and all kinds of stuff involved. And so before I could even get to him, there's just an army of people to have to deal with. And so all I know is what I just told you. And that's just my gut feeling, if I can trust it. And I've found in my life that generally I can. Because otherwise, dealing with humans, you always have a piece of a chance of misinformation, misunderstanding, disinformation, whatever you want to call it. And so just looking at the whole scenario, my gut feeling is that government is doing something, trying to act like they know something to stay relevant. But at the end of the day, and I'm glad you mentioned this too, I saw this video where a lot of people were, before there were researchers, are now considering that there's non-human humanoids. Basically, they're not human, but they look very much like us, because they even pass for humans if they were among us, and that they are among us. And those are people that would never consider this before. And so, as I've often said on the show, there's also then, you have to then consider eyewitnesses, all these experiences that have been happening. And for at least gathering information. I'm not saying that the government can now do reparations or something, for them to say, okay, here's $100,000 because you abducted and we didn't believe you, or whatever, but at least for information gathering and for the state that they're in now. Because I'm surprised that the senators that are heading this research, that are having the that are heading this congressional hearing, that they don't know more, because a lot of times when they talk about all the people I've pretty much talked to or know about or interviewed, and so I'm just like, so you're coming to us? I'm like, you're the government, it's like, what are you, instead of going to their secret vaults to open up to whatever it is that they know, they're coming to us, the average Joes, that have been, such as, Stephen Greer and a lot of the other, George Knapp and everyone that's been in this field for even longer, than I've been alive, they're going to them for answers. And I'm just like, well, you're the government. What the hell are you doing? It's like, why aren't you just, pushing wherever you can push to open this? But it's a perfect example how there has always been these multiple levels to our government, to where, this hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. And I guess I don't know how they're going to crack that open, but that's a lot of time. That's the biggest reason why I went the direction that I did, because I would still be sitting there begging, writing Freedom of Information Acts to the government. Please tell me, what do you know about UFOs? I just set out on my own, whatever other way I can, only to realize, like, oh, okay, this is way beyond a piece of paper, And so anyway, so I hope my answer makes sense to you. Okay, who do we have next? Cross Signal says, I've recently heard of quantum communication. Do you have more information on this type of communication? Thanks, Edna. I don't. I haven't into, when it comes to like quantum technology and just the quantum computers, and it's quite amazing what they already were able to develop. So I don't know how this quantum communication would look, but I was looking at quantum processing a while back, and it was amazing to where when you have a chip, when you have a processor, you can always have a calculated path on, you do X, you get Y, you do A, you get B, and it's a machine. But there's this whole bunch of woo-woo that happens in quantum computing, and on the minute levels of quantum level of computing, to where truly random events happen that they can't explain. So it's something, there's several documentaries on that, and because I'm just going to sound like a dumbass trying to explain it to you, I would really just recommend watch it, please, on your own, to just kind of specifically look into quantum computing and what that does, and then whatever else information is out there, because it's not something I'm immediately involved with, so I would not be, very well educated on that topic right now. Okay, Okay, and then Cross Signal also says, and thanks for the UFO marathon. Oh, you're welcome. I appreciated you watching if you did. Edward Sosa has written, I want to believe in Bashar, but what is the difference between Billy Edward Myers' UFO case and Bashar? Why do you think Billy Myers' case is misunderstood? There's going to be very, very controversial opinion on this. I don't want to just, like, whoever I interview, I really respect them for giving me the time to talk to me, but at the same time, it helps me gather more information about who they are. And just because I really don't want to start a feud or any other kind of problems, I just personally think that the representation for Billy Myers that he has in the United States is probably not the best, and some of the other people that he's been surrounding himself with that are almost like, from what I heard, almost like his handlers in Switzerland where he lives, are not necessarily the best people for him to have around, because it's almost made it like a cult-like environment now, to where if anybody questions him, if anybody has any other thoughts or ideas about what in the world this is that he's presenting, they're very vicious about it, and so I'm just going to leave it at that. I think that's the general problem. Why Billy Myers information is just not more well, known better in the United States or anywhere else in the world in a different way than what it is now. Okay. Oh, and then I'm not trying to ignore your question. I just realized you kind of phrased the difference as what is the difference between Billy Myers' UFO case and Bashar? So, like I often said, I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, Bashar would have often these different messages or would say something to where you can take an action on, right? So, for example, and I always use this example because it's the most basic first thing that I think everybody can act on. So I always talk about it and mention it. But he talks about belief systems. And so he urges people to analyze their belief systems and go deep down and figure out why they have certain beliefs that they do. Because he says that it's when you figure out why you have the belief, do you then figure out why you react the way you react? So change your belief system and you will change your outlook on how you view things. And when you take that to heart, like I did, and you really go down that path, do you realize like, oh wow, this was really good piece of information that really changed my life, And I'm talking about everything, about certain whatever it is. I mean, when it's a good thing, right? When it's love, good times, whatever, you don't ask for, please help me with some problem, right? Please, I'm having issues with having too much fun. How do I deal with this, right? We never ask that. We always, are focused on things when things are not going good for us. It's like, why can't I find love? Why can't I, hang out with people? Or why am I having difficulties in crowds? Why can't I find the job that I want? All these other things, that's when we do the actual homework. We never do any homework when everything's going great for us, right? And so that's, I think, the difference too, where Billy Myers wrote a lot about what he had experienced and what they had told him. That information now, like I said, is being then pushed via different people that I think are not they're not doing the information, they're not doing the justice to that information. Whereas in Bashar and Daryl Enka, I met Daryl. I was very fortunate to be at his house and do the interview with him, and he's a very humble person, very cool dude, and like usually, I'm not saying I'm the best judge of character, but when somebody's acting in front of me, it's very clear to me. It's as clear as like a hammer hitting my head, and I got none of that from Daryl. He just literally is somebody that had an experience where Bashar made contact with him in the way that he did, and he made a documentary on that called Contact. I would urge you to check it out on his website. And he just basically lived his life and did what he did to basically spread the message in the way he does for Bashar, which is at certain times to do the channeling and have these events that they do. And so, if anything, so I hope that it kind of explains like that's the difference between Billy Myers and Bashar. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? All right. Well, I wouldn't mind talking to all of you. If you had any more questions, please put them down now, write them down now. Otherwise, I've kind of covered what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted to cover with all of you. I hope some of my rambling made sense, or why I was talking about certain subjects in the way that I did. And I hope you kind of start your own little pondering around and thinking and just kind of getting your head out of the day-to-day business and trying to have all these images in the world out there control you, and then step back and just kind of control your own little world, and come to an understanding to where it just makes you a little bit more happier today than you were yesterday. Okay. All right. Well, there's no more questions. I think I've covered the subject I wanted to cover. I do have an interview that's going to be pre-recorded. A while back, I got zapped with lightning here, so I don't have the ability to be able to do it live, or at least not to where I can have two cameras and all of that. So it's a lot easier for me to do this interview here and pre-record it and do it in the old-fashioned style, which is what I kind of started out with, where it's just the subject talking about their subject and nothing else. You won't hear me or see me. It's just them presenting whatever it is that they're talking about. And so I would like to do that again with a guest where I'm pretty sure I can get this. And I don't want to say too much. I'm sorry. I don't mean to, egg you on with this and not tell you much more. But I think you'll find it interesting, and I think I hope that I asked the questions that all of you would have in mind, as if it were live and you were listening to what he is saying and asking in the way you would ask, because this particular subject, which again, I'm sorry I can't mention it right now because there's a chance it will not happen, and then I said it for no reason. But I want to get to the juicy part of this, and I'll try my best to actually keep it that way, instead of just like a general over surface about this particular subject that this person will talk about. I would ask them to just truly, for the sake of all of you understanding more, for them to just get into that, because this person is high ranking enough to where they would be able to speak on that and be able to tell you, yes, this is happening, or no, that's not happening. So look forward to that. I'm hoping that maybe within the next couple of weeks I can get the interview in, and of course, as always, I'll post that online. But yeah, I might actually have another guest next Wednesday. I might have open lines again. I'm not 100% sure, but I hope you tune in either way and join me. And I hope you learn something and find some answers that you haven't had before. But yep, thanks to all of you. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a good rest of the day, and you take care.